guitar in my woodworking guitar repair shop, Dave Richard, here in Corinth, Vermont. I've been a woodworker and now a luthier, instrument repairman, since about 1983. I was a carpenter. I got into it because I worked as a carpenter when I was in college, and did that for a couple of years, finished college, decided I wanted to make furniture, went to a school for a year, and then I hung out a shingle. And from 1983 to about 5 years ago, 2016, I made furniture and cabinets and did antique restoration full-time. In about the year 2000, a buddy of mine built a guitar, and that got me interested in guitar making and repair. So I started doing that in my spare time, and gradually would take on jobs. I sort of trained myself to do instrument repair, increasingly difficult jobs on my own instruments or freebies or cheapies, and till finally, probably about 10 years ago, I was asked to repair my first Martin. And that went well, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. Well, I've always liked, ever since I started woodworking, I've always liked antiques, fixing old things. I've always liked, since I was in high school, I've always liked swing music, vintage jazz, and archtops were the guitars that were used in the heyday, 1920s, 30s, 40s of vintage jazz. And about 7 years ago, a friend of mine had a 1939. I started looking for an archtop, and wasn't familiar with Epiphones per se. I was looking for one, and my friend had a 39 Epiphone for sale, and I bought it and got very interested in the history of these guitars. That 39 turned out to be a great guitar. I did kind of the usual maintenance. I did a neck reset, I refretted it. Wonderful guitar, and that just one led to another. The history of the company is very interesting. They made very high quality guitars through the 1930s and 1940s. So it's a nice company to focus on. Although I certainly like Gibsons and Martins, both of whom made archtops. So I at this point have owned and/or repaired and/or resurrected quite a number of vintage Epiphone archtops. Different sizes, different years, different models, and almost every one has been an excellent instrument, and they're all quirky and interesting in their own way. So when I was about the year 1970-71, my older brother, I must have been 14 at the time, my older brother announced he was going to get an electric bass. And I thought, I want to be a rock and roll star too, so I got an electric guitar and, played that for many years, played acoustic. I didn't think, for all my years of furniture making and guitar playing all along, I didn't think anything about working on instruments or building one until, as I mentioned earlier, I had that epiphany when a friend of mine built an archtop electric around the year 2000. And that kind of flipped a switch. And since I play guitar, and since I'm a cabinet maker and have a lot of skill with woodworking and hand tools, it was a pretty easy thing for me to pick up and learn the specialized skills involved in instrument repair and building. Initially, I worked on anything I could get my hands on, and at this point, it's flat top acoustics, archtop acoustics, mandolins, I am able to do some repair work on fiddles. I play a little bit of fiddle. So there's nothing I like better than having a quality instrument come into my hands that needs some TLC to be brought back to its best. So I'd say I've been working on instruments for about 20 years now, and full-time about 5-6 years. No, I did not grow up in Vermont. My father went to Dartmouth, which is not too far away from Corinth. My parents bought a house in 1979 in the nearby town, and while I was finishing college, I would graduate. And since I had lived all over the United States and traveled quite a bit, once I started visiting Vermont and the Upper Valley and New Hampshire, I realized that once I graduated, I was moving to this area to settle. No ifs, ands, or buts. And that's what I did, and it's worked out very well. The landscape of Vermont is gorgeous in a subtle kind of way. It's not like the Rocky Mountains, or it's not like the sea, or living on the coast. It's kind of an unfolding landscape. It's very charming. So there's the physical landscape, and then there's the seasonal changes, which adds to the enjoyment of the landscape through each one. And summer's beautiful, fall is magnificent, winter has its own pleasures. Mud season is not fun, but it just makes one appreciate all the other seasons even more. When I moved to Vermont, I could identify wood species when it was sawn into planks, but I had no idea how to identify different trees. Well, I became friends with a man near in my town at that time who was taught a class on spring botany. I took that class and I learned some bird identification and tree identification, and that just enhanced my appreciation of the area I live in. I think the internet has made it much easier to have a small business like this, as far as finding customers and getting the word out for my own skill and finding new customers. I think sometimes young people ask me, "Oh, I see you went to college, you majored in history, and now you're a woodworker, and how does that work? What advice would you have for me as a young person?" And the best advice I can give is find something you love to do and stick with it if you can, because that in the long run is what's going to give one the greatest satisfaction of anything. So I prefer, for myself, I get extreme satisfaction out of something that's broken and bringing it back to playing condition. Actually, whether it's a piece of furniture or an instrument, but there's something truly satisfying about bringing an instrument back to playing condition and having it sing again.